Welcome back to another Tasty Thursday with Lahar and Pestis. I am Pestis.
I'm Lahar.
And today we are going to do something for you that was requested. We're going to discuss the proteinaceous nature of eggs. And I'm going to cook some and a couple of different preparations for you that a lot of people think is easy and a lot of people think is extremely hard. And getting it perfect, or at least extremely close to perfect, is actually pretty difficult to do without a lot of practice. In front of you, you see a bowl with 6 eggs in it. And I'm going to take these eggs and I'm going to put them in some water. I'm putting the eggs in while the water is still cold because part of the trick to boiling eggs correctly is that you have to let them heat up with the water and then get to boiling. That way it doesn't form that little gray membrane around the yolk. And then also you don't overcook the eggs. So if you'll notice, I took the eggs out, I put them in the water. There is the water. I'm just going to turn it on. And now I know from experience that this process is going to take about 9 minutes for this amount of water with the eggs in it at high temperature. So I'm going to set my timer, an egg timer, for 10 minutes. And we'll come back to you. And welcome back. So our eggs, the water, has started to boil. It's got a very light boil going on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my timer. I was off by 10 seconds, but I'm going to reset my timer so that this only boils for about 3 to 4 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and go with 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm going to start that timer, and now at the end of that 3 minutes and 30 seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the water off of the heat, and I'm going to let the residual heat left in the pot finish cooking the eggs. This way it keeps the eggs moist and tender without drying out the yolk, and you don't have that ugly gray membrane around the outside of the yolk. So I'll get back to you when this next step is done. Alright, and welcome back. We now have a rapid boil. My timer just went off, and I'm now going to turn the water off, and I'm going to move it off of the heat. And I'm going to let it stay like that until they're done. There's not really a set time for this. I usually leave it for 10 to 15 minutes, closer to the 15 minutes, just to make sure. But I'll get back to you when it's ready. And welcome back, this is Pestis. So, while that is cooling off, it is time for the science lesson portion of your Food Science Porn show. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about proteins and how proteins work, and at least in regards to eggs. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are 20 amino acids in protein. Okay? Now, these 20 amino acids, they make up our proteins. That's the building blocks for them. And of course the building blocks for the amino acids is our DNA, which is converted to RNA, and that RNA is then converted into protein. That's just a really quick rundown of what's known as the central dogma of molecular biology. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to demonstrate what happens inside of the eggs when we're cooking them. Alright, welcome back. I've got a little drawing here on the whiteboard done now. So the albumin in eggs is sometimes considered to be a protein. However, that's a little bit inaccurate. The albumin in eggs, the white of eggs, is actually a plethora of different proteins. The albumin is actually a fluid that contains a lot of different proteins in it. And most of those proteins inside of there are what we call globular proteins. This is a very, very sketchy representation of a globular protein. A globular protein is, it's a blob of protein. The strands of the protein, the beta sheets, the alpha helices, all that stuff are folded in such a way that it has a very particular shape. And the shape is held together by what we call hydrogen bonds. And that's the globular protein. Now, when you start cooking an egg, what happens is it goes through what's called a denaturing process. Denaturing process is the breaking of those hydrogen bonds, and what you notice in the globular proteins is that they start becoming looser and unwinding themselves. And with more heat addition, they will eventually become almost completely linear. And that is when you have the egg whites actually becoming white. So this is what the protein looks like in your cooked eggs. Why is it so important that we have a cooked egg as opposed to a raw egg? Well, for starters, raw eggs can carry diseases on the shells very easily. Salmonella is very popular amongst chickens. They love it, and they love to put it on their eggs. And so you generally want to wash eggs, and then you want to cook them just for that reason. But even more reason is that if you were to eat raw eggs and have the protein in this structure right here, the enzymes inside of our bodies can't digest this protein in its globular form as well as it can in this linear form. Our enzymes can just come along and just start cutting and get the amino acids out, and bam, it's done. In this one here, we have to have enzymes that come along, and they try to cut, but they can't fit on most of this. So then we have processes that go through, and they try to break the hydrogen bonds to get to this or to this. They try to denature it inside of our bodies. And sometimes that fails a lot too, because a lot of the times we're just not able to supply the appropriate amount of energy to breaking all of these chemical bonds. That's why cooking eggs is the preferred method for eating them, including, I know this is going to make me unpopular, but including over easy and other forms where the yolk is runny. You don't want runny yolks. It makes it harder for your body to digest. You want to have denatured, or you want to have cooked yolks. So now that that is done, I think that this has been going long enough that now I am going to start putting cold water into this to help keep the eggs from becoming overdone. And when that is finished, I'll be back. And welcome back to Lahar and Pestis. This is Pestis speaking. Now, these eggs have been rinsed and peeled and allowed to cool down completely. You don't want to use warm eggs because they are harder to work with while you're doing the cutting and all of that. I've got my metal bowl here in front of me, and this stage of making deviled eggs for me is where it becomes less science and a little bit more artwork. First, I'm going to show you the inside of the egg so that you can see what I'm speaking about. Alright, so there is the egg, and now I'm going to bring the yolk out and put it into the bowl. Look at that. And now I'm going to put the cut half over here on a plate, and I'm going to continue. Alright, welcome back. I have got all of the eggs sliced. I have got the egg yolks pressed and crumbled as well as I can. I usually only use a fork. Sometimes I try to push it through a colander, but I'm not going to do that this time. I don't feel like digging it out and then washing it later. Lahar is over there getting me one of my spatulas because I forgot to grab it. And what I'm going to do now is show you the art of deviled egg making. And I'm going to try to give you as many measurements as I can. But I do this by sight and by taste. There is not a fixed recipe here, unfortunately. I know a lot of people like to have fixed recipes, but as fixed as this gets is the stuff that I put into it. But I am going to try to use some measurements for you. Okay, first I am going to add about 1/4 cup of mayonnaise for the 6 eggs. Okay, that 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, actually put it at the consistency that I like to put my eggs at. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep using the tines of the fork to mix as much of the yolk and break as much of the yolk up into the mayonnaise as I can. My next ingredient that I like to put in is Worcestershire sauce. And once again, this is not really a measurement. This is more of a how does it look and taste and smell. And the taste that I'm looking for when I sample this is I want it to be just a little bit tangy from the Worcestershire sauce. And I'm going to start with that much. I'm going to guess that that's maybe 1/2 teaspoon. Every once in a while, we're going to take our spatula and we're going to scrape everything together. But you see the consistency there? that's about the consistency. Well, that's not about. That is the consistency that I want for my deviled eggs. And now I'm going to give it a taste. That's not enough Worcestershire sauce. Not by a long shot. So I'm going to add about the same amount that I did the first time. Okay, there's a little bit of the tang and a little bit of the savory from the Worcestershire sauce. So I'm going to put just a smidgen more. And we're going to call it at enough. And by smidgen, I mean maybe a couple of glugs more. And glug is an official scientific measurement for future reference. I use the glug quite frequently. Another place that you can use the glug as an official scientific measurement is the water cooler. Because when you're filling up your cup or your bottle or whatever, you know, it glugs. The water bottle that I like to use is a 3 glug cup. The next ingredient that I'm going to add is going to enhance the tangy a little bit, and that's going to be some yellow mustard. Probably about a teaspoon of it to start with. Now I'm going to taste it. I need to add a little bit more mustard. About another 3/4 to a whole teaspoon. And now for the official measuring stuff. I'm going to put about half of a teaspoon to 3/4 of a teaspoon of garlic powder in there. I'm going to put an equal amount of onion powder in there. I'm going to put a little bit more pepper in there. And a very minuscule amount of salt, maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon. So that was 3/4, 3/4, 1 1/4 of a teaspoon. And finally, the magic ingredient, dill. I'm going to use quite a bit of this, 3/4 to a full teaspoon, and we're going to add that right on top. And now I'm going to begin incorporating everything. Let's taste this. That is perfect. Alright, everything is mixed. Can you hand me a sandwich bag, please? So, sandwich bag. And I'm going to trim the corner of it, like so. And I'm going to put that back in. And now I'm going to open this, and Lahara is going to come over here and hold it. And I'm going to use the spatula to scoop this in. Alright. We've got everything loaded in there. I need to stop playing with it, using it as an excuse. Alright. Now we're going to seal the bag. And I'm going to bring the plate over. And now, I am going to start filling the egg halves. Now first, I generally only fill them to the edge. And then I go back and top them off. Now the final step is to dust it with ground paprika. Smoked paprika. Am I the only person that thinks that smoked paprika smells like bacon?
I haven't smelled smoked paprika in a while, so I don't know.
Well, smell it. And there we have it. Deviled eggs.
I guess so.
We'll get back to you with the next egg dish.